their lives. I mean, I've seen mothers that thought they'd heal. They never heal. They say it gets worse with time. It gets worse with time. They lose their boy. They lose their baby. They lose their young daughter to fentanyl poisoning. And I had that talk with President Xi the other day, too, of China. I said, we don't want that crap in our country. We got to stop it. I would have stopped it. I had a deal with him where he was going to give the maximum penalty, which in China is the death penalty for drug dealing. And he was all said he was going to give the maximum penalty to fentanyl dealers. If they send to the United States, they were going to get the death penalty. And of course, Biden didn't pick that up. I had that deal all done. It was all wrapped up. We were going to have it done. And then the election went, let's put it nicely, didn't go the proper way. I'm trying to be nice about it. It was rigged. And we had an incompetent president elected, and he never followed up on that deal. But he should have followed up, because if they got the death penalty, they wouldn't be sending fentanyl to Mexico, Canada, and other places. We're talking about a tariff of 10% on China based on the fact that they're sending fentanyl to Mexico and Canada. Probably February 1st is the date we're looking at. For Mexico and China, we're talking about approximately 25%.
Date on the Gaza.
We have a thing called the hostages are coming back going on right now, and they are coming back. Some of them have been very damaged. You look at the young lady with her hand practically blown off. You know how that happened, right? Did you know how that happened? When you find out, you're not going to be too happy because it was terrible. But the hostages are starting to come back. If I weren't here, they wouldn't be back ever. They would have never come back. They would have all died. If this were done a year earlier, if Biden would have done this deal a year and a half, 2 years ago, or frankly, it should have never happened. October 7th should have never happened. Nobody should be dead. But through weakness, they allowed it to happen, and then it was a disaster from there. But you go back just 6 months ago, many of these young people were living. Young people don't die like that. They're just dying. And young people aren't dying at 22 and 23 years old. They don't die. But now they're dying, and you wonder why they're dying. They're being killed, and they have been killed. But they say 6 months ago, you would have had 11 more living hostages. Think of that. 6 months ago. But Biden couldn't get it done, and it was only the imposition that I put on as a deadline that got it done. But it's a very sad situation. It should have never happened. I'll tell you, 2 things should have never happened. 3 things. Inflation should have never happened. It would have never happened, except for what they did to energy and their crazy spending. And Ukraine would have never happened. Never. By the way, Russia never would have gone into Ukraine. I had a very strong understanding with Putin. It would have never, ever happened. He disrespected Biden. Very simple. He disrespects people. He's smart. He understands. He disrespected Biden. And also the Middle East would have never happened because Iran was broke. They had no money. They had no money for Hamas. They had no money for Hezbollah. It would have never happened. October 7th would have never happened. But it did happen. So this is the cards I've been given. And we're getting the hostages back. That would have never happened under Biden. They would have never come back. They were just dying not that slowly. They were dying or being killed. But that was what was happening. Well, we're looking at that. We're talking to Zelensky. We're going to be talking with President Putin very soon. And we'll see how it all happens. We're going to look at it very soon. One thing I do feel, the European Union should be paying a lot more than they're paying because under Biden, I mean, we're in there for $200 billion more. Now, it affects them more than it affects us. We have an ocean in between, right? Little thing called an ocean. The European Union should equalize. We're in there for $200 billion more than the European Union. I mean, what are we, stupid? I guess the answer is yes, because they must think so. But the European Union takes advantage of us tremendously on trade. And they now take advantage of, and always have. If I didn't get involved years ago, my first term, one of the first things I noticed was that they're not paying enough. They're not paying. And a lot of those countries weren't even paying. The NATO countries, they weren't paying. Only 7 out of 28 were paying. We were one of them. And Poland was one. And they had a few of them that were paying, and some were paying very proudly. Usually, the closer to the borderline of Russia they were, the faster they paid, okay? The ones that were further away tended not to pay so fast. And one thing on that, I think they should lift their number not to 2%, but to 5%. NATO should be at 5%, not at 2%. 2% is ridiculous, yeah.